A warm welcome to everyone to the Independent Covering Pavilion this morning to listen to a panel of experts to discuss the BVD Cymru scheme. And just for information, we will be recording, therefore the discussion will be in English only, in order for us to produce a podcast. And due to the constraints of timing, we will not be an opportunity for a Q&A session. But the questions today have been submitted by members after reaching out. But if you wish, and I'm sure the panel will only be happy to discuss the matters afterwards. Right then, and down to work. I'll introduce the panel. Phil Thomas, who is a famous vet of the popular TV programme Vets, and has worked across South and Mid Wales and is involved in various veterinary projects, including BVD Cymru. Katie Davies, an auctioneer with McCartney's, having become a partner since 2017, and to put a face to a voice, she is the person that sells the lamb carcasses in the winter fair. John Griffiths is the head of agricultural research and development in Gethiair campus of Coleg Sir Gaer and is currently the chair of the BVD steering group. Gwion Eiron, apart from being an exceptional poet, he is the lead on ydyn Cymru, overseeing the operational delivery of ydyn Cymru, and this work includes the administrating of BVD Cymru database on behalf of the Welsh Government in partnership with BVD steering group. And finally, but certainly not least, Richard Pizzey, graduated from the Royal Veterinary College in 2015 and followed by an internship at the same college. He has worked in a mixed and large animal practice in Mid and South Wales and joined the Welsh Government policy in 2023. And myself, Alan Wen, Regional Vice President for Independent Cymru. The panel today are all members of the BVD steering group, and I am honoured also to be a member, along with Ellen Jenkins, Policy Officer, on behalf of Independent Cymru, to be a member of that steering group. Right, boys, we'll hit the questions that we received from our members. And I'll turn first to John. Could you please, John, give us a brief background on where we are and what has happened and where we are now?
Diolch, Alan. Yeah, we've been on a journey to try to eradicate BVD out of Wales. Started over 10 years ago. We approached the government for some help, and some of us can remember the Goredi BVD project. We learned a lot. 90% of farmers took part, and it was very interesting to find the response of the industry. They were keen to try to get rid of BVD. And what we learned during the Goredi stage was that we needed the support of the government to try to stop some farmers moving PI animals. We needed a law to help that. So that took a lot of convincing. It took a consultation, which was unanimous. There was no doubt that farmers were saying, we need your help, we need to stop this. So in line with other regions like Ireland and Scotland, we're following and making great gains. So legislation, without going into the finer detail, has become really important as of the 1st of July this month, a massive month for us for the BVD journey to get rid of it. And now all farmers need to screen their herds once a year to see their statuses. A large proportion are screening clear, which is wonderful news. And the ones then that are screening with a smell, with a not negative result, basically then need to delve deeper to find out if they've got any persistently infected animals. So that's the progress that we're making. We're on a journey. We haven't got to the end point yet, but we are definitely making good positive progress towards that point.
Thank you, John. Brilliant. I can turn to Phil now, if I may, Phil, because John mentioned PIs. Could you give us just a quick explanation of what is a PI and how can a PI influence or the consequences of a PI within a herd?
Yeah, it's a fascinating part of the disease, really. The PI, a persistently infected animal, is born a carrier, and you can't create a PI after the animal is born. They're always born in this state. Fortunately, there's not that many of them out there, but they create a lot of damage. So to give you an idea of the amount of virus that animals produce with this disease, say we get a cold and we produce virus when you're infectious, when you've got that cold, but in a few weeks you get rid of it. Same with BVD. If an animal catches BVD, it'll throw out maybe 10,000 viruses a day for up to maybe 3 weeks, which sounds a lot, but a PI will throw out 10,000 viruses an hour for its life. So that's the scale of it. So you're looking at maybe if you put all the viruses in a barrel, it might be 1 barrel of virus from a transiently infected, which is the vast majority of animals, whereas a PI will produce 1,000 barrels. And that's the scale of controlling the sale of PIs and finding the PIs and getting rid of the PIs as soon as possible. You vastly reduce the amount of virus that's out there. So how you produce a PI is either a PI cow produces a calf and they're always PIs, or a normal cow gets infected whilst pregnant. And if it affects the right stage of pregnancy, or the wrong stage of pregnancy from our point of view, then that is how you get a PI produced from a normal cow. So it's protecting the unborn calf is the big part of the disease control.
Thanks, Phil. Gwion, John mentioned screening and Phil mentioned PIs and the results of the PIs. As I mentioned earlier, you're the lead on the database. How can farmers find, is this information, all this information now on the database, and how can they find it, and is it fairly, and is it easy to navigate?
Yes, but so from a database point of view, or the system as we, the ydyn system, all laboratory uploads their test results onto the ydyn system, and then that information then is available for the keepers, for the vets, and for market as well to check it. There is a process to register for an ydyn cattle account, which is slightly different from the sheep account. But this is the new system that we're developing for the cattle services. So if you do register for an ydyn account for the cattle now, it will serve you better in the long term when we transfer from BCMS to ydyn. But once you get registered, you could go through to the right portal, and the information will there. You'll be able to access your herd status, which will either be negative or non-negative, and I think we'll cover that later on. And also you'll have individual status for the animal as well. So once an animal has been tested, it'll either be a positive or a negative status there. So all the information you need should be on the database. Again, it's available for your vets as well, and that's a critical part of this process, I think.
Thank you, Gwion. Diolch yn fawr. Is there, do you think that the information about the BVD and the program has been shared, and this is a question for every one of you, has been adequately shared? Is there, looking back from when we originally started on this journey, has there any places that you see that we should have done better, and we should have done this and that and the other in order to be more, so that the vets and farmers alike are more better informed, or are they good enough? Are they informed as good as they can be? And the auctioneers as well. Who will take this poison challenge on?
Shall I? from the government point of view, I mean, there's always more we can be doing. I mean, we can never really do enough in terms of communication, can we? But I think there have been pretty substantial efforts made to try and communicate to the industry, from government, from BVD Cymru. I think also the unions have been involved as well in communicating. But yeah, we're never going to get that 100% saturation of the message, but we're going to continue trying to get that message out there. It's probably not been helped by the fact we had some very last minute changes to the legislation, which obviously adds confusion to things when you're changing things at the last minute. But we've made changes to try and support keepers and make life easier for people. But no, I think in reflection we could have done better, but we're going to try and do better in future.
Okay, Chief, as you're at the rock face on the markets and things like that, can you, from your experience as an auctioneer, what's the situation been from information and during, we're 3 weeks now into phase 2, how was that implicated in the auction week?
I think overall, Welsh farmers are aware, Welsh cattle keepers. There's always some that you won't reach because that is the nature of the beast to some degree. I obviously I practice in a market right on the border. So one thing, and I know you've got to get the Welsh farmers fully engaged first, but I think there is value in getting the message out about BVD Cymru across the border, because obviously we know the trade of animals across the border is very fluid, England to Wales, Wales to England, and we don't want any regulations, as we saw with Blue Tongue last year, to affect that trade. So getting the message to the English farmers of what we're doing in Wales, I think is important as well. There isn't a sister scheme in England yet. I believe they're way off that being the case. But those farmers, especially along the border on the English side, if they know there's regulation in England that in Wales that requires BVD testing, can they do tag and test, etc., so they can still have the market into Wales. So I think that cross-border communication would help the industry as a whole overall. So if that's something we can sort of try to step up in the future, once we're sort of, feeling comfortable in Wales with what you're doing, I think that would be great and help trade, make sure there's no problems.
Yeah, and I think the message to the farmers who do trade in Wales or in the border markets is that if you start tag and testing, not only are you helping the health of your own stock, but you're also increasing the value for the purchaser, because it'll reduce the costs for the purchaser in Wales if those animals are already tag and tested, because we can use those results as post-movement tests now. And it would also put them in a stronger position when it comes to the fact when the English legislation comes in. So it would be good to try and help the people on the border communities.
John,
yeah, happy to. So there's 10,000 cattle keepers in Wales. They all vary a lot. There's up to some farms milking over 2,000 cows on a holding, and some just keeping 2 or 3 hobby beef animals that they never want to breed from. So communication to such a range of people is always going to be a challenge. They've definitely all had literature. We managed to get 90% of them to partake in the first scheme. Massive diolch, thank you to the vets for getting that achieved. We piggybanked the TB test because every one of them had to have a TB test annually. So there was an opportunity there for communication, and we're definitely reliant on them. Auctioneers are now definitely becoming more and more important because trading and moving is key, and that's where their involvement becomes essential for support, and they're definitely allies to the programme. I can't thank them enough for the openness that they've taken this on, because it's an extra hassle. Let's not pretend it's not, but they know that they prefer to sell quality stock, disease-free, than the other, so they're on board and helping. And I'd also say the best communication is between friends, between neighbours, between family. And if we can help each other, if one can learn something and then not just keep it but share it amongst ourselves, that's the best way to get knowledge out there. So I'd really ask if anybody can think of somebody that might not have heard or understood or feel comfortable with this, please just go and try to open the conversation and check your neighbours' statuses. It can help you and help them to get rid of it together.
And that the relationship between the keeper and the vet is critical for this as well, and that's what we've seen on the database as well. we get many questions about testing, which animals to test. Having a testing program, so you need to discuss with a vet ahead of time so you get the right cattle tested. And if you do get to a non-negative state, discuss with your vet what's the best way for your farm to go to a negative status, because there are many ways of reaching that sort of solution, and that interrelationship between the keeper and the vet is critical in this to manage this disease, I believe.
Great, thank you, panel. Can I turn back to you now, Richard? We have heard the mention of a negative status and a non-negative status. Could you explain and enhance on that? What is the definition of those terms? Why have you adopted a non-negative status as a heading? Also, what is the implications of if a farmer receives a non-negative status? What is the regulations that he or they must follow or to adhere to the scheme?
Yeah, sorry, sure. So obviously the not negative status is causing a bit of confusion at the moment. And I think where to start is we've only got the two statuses, negative or not negative. Now a negative herd is one that has engaged in the screening and found no evidence of BVD infection. So we can never really prove a negative, but they've done the screening and it looks like the herd is clear. We don't suspect BVDs there, so they've got a negative status. And that's where we want all farms to be. That's the direction we're hoping that everyone's going to be moving in. A not negative holding is one that, as it says, is not negative, has not been able to prove or demonstrate this kind of freedom from antibodies, that the herd is hopefully free of the disease. So that not negative status, that includes farms which have maybe had a positive antibody screen, have maybe have got a PI on farm, or that haven't done their screening and haven't really engaged in the testing in the way the legislation says. So it's a catch-all for all those herds that are on the pathway to being negative but aren't there yet. It aligns with the kind of the status of the herds they have in Scotland, so negative, not negative. Just having those two categories, hopefully in the long term, when we have kind of a more unified approach to BVD eradication across GB when England are on board with their legislation, just having those two statuses which are consistent across the nation should simplify trade and make sure it's obvious that I'm buying from a negative herd, or what does this herd in Scotland or England, what does that status mean? And we just feel this was simpler than having negative, positive, unknown, working towards negative, just two statuses. Negative is where you want to be. If you're not negative, hopefully you're on the pathway to being negative. As to what those not negative herds need to do, it depends where you are right now. If you haven't screened or haven't engaged with much screening yet, well, that's probably the first thing to do some antibody screening. If you have, or you've had positive antibody results, then it's right, let's find the BVD that's on farm, let's go hunting for it, let's do that PI hunt. So if you've had a positive antibody screen, you need to do a PI hunt. You need to start tagging and testing your calves as they're born within 20 days of birth. And you're going to need to pre-movement test animals for them to leave the farm, which is one of the new bits which has come in as of 1st of July. So that's going to apply to all animals that leave the farm that's not negative, unless they're going to slaughter, or unless they're going to an orange market or an AFU. Those kind of routes that animals can leave the farm, which are ultimately going to end up being slaughtered and aren't going to need a TB test, they're currently exempt from needing the BVD pre-movement test, which hopefully makes things a bit simpler. But yeah, those are the two big things: pre-movement testing and PI hunting, and tagging and testing those calves as they're born.
Thank you, Richard. Phil, you want to come in?
One of the worries that you have when we start talking about movement restrictions is we start thinking about TB, and that those rules are far more draconian in terms of what's allowed to move in and move out. So even if you're not negative, there is ways of trade. You can buy animals, no problem. You can send animals to slaughter, no problem. The difficulty is if you're not negative, is the selling of animals, but there are routes of doing that pre-movement testing, as Richard has just said. So that can be now aligned with the time of your TB test, but you don't have to do that if you've done all your PI hunt and got your herd back into a negative status. So aiming towards getting to negative, but the rules don't tie you up to the same extent as TB, and I think that's very important. So it's a lot less of a strain. I've had people in tears talking to me on the phone when I've been doing sort of a helpline, because they are so worried about it, and there really isn't need to be a worry about it.
Diolch, Phil. Can I turn to you, Katie, if I may? Richard's mentioned about the selling of livestock through markets, and you're, as an auctioneer, you're as near to that market as we are as farmers as well. Has the behaviour of farmers or purchasers changed since July the 1st, and has the phase 2 or the restrictions or not restrictions, the new rules, has that impacted on the trade, or in your point of view, has it changed what is coming through the market?
Thank you. I think we're probably just sort of about 3 weeks in. We're probably a little too early to really see how this is going to pan out, if that makes sense. But I think it needs to be acknowledged that the BVD steering group have really worked hard to make the balance between eradicating BVD and allowing trade. And there's been lots of really good, exceptions made, as in Richard said, if you are sort of fattening and finishing, you've still got that orange market route, and PIs can go through a red market to slaughter as well as directly to abattoir. So if you are a live weight seller and you don't feel comfortable with the dead weight, you've still got that option in all angles of your marketing. We had a sale of cattle in Knighton last Friday. The cattle we sell are very much 50-50 from England and Wales because of where we sit. If I'm honest, the majority of our cattle go to England, but we do have Welsh buyers as well. And I was watching the buyers from Wales thinking, I wonder what's going through your mind. Are you looking at the BVD status, etc., etc.? And I think that will be something, as we move through the second half of this year, through the busy autumn sales, we will really start to see, is that mindset, not to say changing, because everyone else wants to buy healthy animals, but are people really taking it on board and thinking and making informed buying decisions? And it'll actually be quite interesting to chat with buyers pre-post sale to sort of ask what are your thoughts on this and learn from it.
Anybody else wants to come in on that?
No, I would say from the system so far, we're 3 weeks in, we've seen 2 PIs move to market, and then both of them have gone straight to slaughter. So far, we're quite happy with what we're seeing. Yes, we've not found lots of PIs yet, but we found quite a few, and we've not seen any being sold through markets or moved on to other keepers. So far, early days, but it's looking quite good.
Thanks, Richard. A lot of questions in the past have been around BVD tag and test. We've all heard that, and this question was probably towards Gwion, and anybody else would like to come in. Are the results of the BVD tag and test from birth compatible with Welsh eggs?
In sense, yes. Any animal that's been tested in Wales, the result will be uploaded to ydyn data system. So every test result going back to 1st of July 2024 is there and can be used by the vets to make their informed decision and to inform the keepers as well, of course.
Following on from that, and most probably I'll throw this one towards you, Richard, because could we get to a place where screening and tag and test can work together or hand in hand in holdings?
Yes, I think that is the ambition. The steering group, we discussed this last year, and it's very plain that the screening approach we've got for herds at the moment isn't working for everyone. I mean, it's an evolution of what we had within the BVD scheme, which was fantastic in terms of it engaged nearly 90% of cattle keepers, and 80% of those keepers that engaged were able to get a negative screen through it. But what we're seeing is that because it doesn't work for everyone, and now it's legislation, we need to do something better. We need to be able to support the keepers who it doesn't work for in getting a negative status. They shouldn't be penalised because the screening doesn't work for their farming system. So I think tag and testing is the solution we've come to there. So the steering group have advised government that they'd like to see tag and testing recognised as an alternative screening method. That would then hopefully support those holdings where maybe you're vaccinating, or if you've got a flying herd or something, you've not got animals that are in the right age range. And for those holdings which have got different CPHs and maybe moving cattle around a bit, I think there is definitely scope to change things. We can't put a definitive timeline on when we'll have that within the legislation, but it is our priority to get it sorted, so that tag and test is recognised more. And obviously we've had the recent changes to the legislation with small amendments to allow keepers to use tag and testing for post-movement tests, to hopefully simplify that process of moving animals from England. And for keepers, if they're tag and testing young calves, for that to count as a pre-movement test as well, so that they don't need to call a vet out to pre-movement test a calf that's less than 42 days and is otherwise going to be moving off the farm.
Thanks, Rhys. You mentioned there, and I'll throw this towards John probably, because he is, as the chair, he is well versed in the regulations. You mentioned calves and animals moving in from England. What are the regulations concerning that type of movements, John?
Yeah, so no problems for a Welsh farmer to go and buy a calf born in England, and you'd anticipate that that calf would come with no knowledge about BVD. So the thing then the Welsh farmer needs to do, they've got 20 days to do what we call a post-movement check on that animal. So the farmer can do it themselves, £3 or £4 for the tag, put the tag in the ear and send it off and get the results back. And if your herd is a negative herd, then your status remains negative after that result comes in. If you don't do that check, then there's something come on your farm that you don't know how safe it was. And it's only fair then to say, well, we've lost that proof of being negative. And then, as we've heard earlier, you then get classified as not negative. What we've also done to try to help us, because what we want is to push this BVD ripple as a proud Welshman further east. And we want this Offers Dyke to be clean, and I'm really worried about Hereford and Shropshire, and I'm not quite so worried about Northumberland or Kent. So if we can get those border farms in England to do tag and test work before they sell their animals, and we've been round the auctions, and the auctioneers now are telling their English farmers that we don't know who they are, to put a copy of the lab results. So say if you've got 10 calves now being tissue sampled, tag and test at birth, and they're going to come into Market Drayton, and Di from Wales wants to buy them. Well, if you can only put the lab result now with the passport as you enter that calf into that auction, then it's an opportunity for that farmer to buy with confidence that it's not a PI animal. And then that result then can go onto our system through the farmer's vet, and the farmer doesn't even need to tag that calf then to prove that it's safe for BVD for that herd and it stays as a negative herd. So we're trying to spread our news into England to help Wales and help the English farmer. We've got no issue with helping them because we just want to get rid of BVD full stop.
Diolch, John.
Could I?
Yes, by all means, Katie, jump in.
Could I just bring one tiny little practical point, which I didn't touch on earlier when I spoke, regarding the database, and it's just a little polite ask really to the vets. Can they please, and I know they're busy people as well, get the results onto the database ASAP if it is something they could prioritise when they've done those tests, because in the short time the regulation has been in, and obviously it's new, we're all learning, we did find that we have had farmers say, well, I tested, had, week before last, had my negative result, but it wasn't on the database yet. And obviously as auctioneers, that is the great tool to us to make this work efficiently and be be safe in the knowledge the information we're giving out is correct. So, you know, if that can be used as efficiently as possible by the vets as well, that would really help in everything.
And just to come on that, we, as Welsh Government, we have recognised that some of the labs have faced challenges getting some data onto the system with uploads, so we've simplified the process for them. So hopefully there shouldn't be so many issues going forwards with that, but we were aware that there were some challenges with data not arriving on time. But so far, the past week or so, it seems to be running quite smoothly.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else want to touch that, or I'll go to another point?
I'm just thinking that we didn't realise that John Griffiths was the new Owen Glyndŵr trying to take over the Midlands for us. So go for it, John.
I'll come with you, be your army.
Yes, brilliant, Phil, brilliant. I can imagine Phil running on his horse and here, running around the marches. You touched, everyone, both of you touched on calves coming in from England, and you mentioned that those would have a clear BVD test. There's no problem, but once a post-movement test has been carried out, and one of those calves, or one or two, have come back with a not negative result, what does that imply to the farmer? Does he need to require to test more? Is the cattle that is already on his holding under restrictions? Does he have to? You know, Richard, can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. So if you buy an animal from England and you post-movement test it, it's positive, then you're going to lose your negative status. So you've got two options there. You can either test that animal again in a few weeks to check that it's not a PI animal. In the meantime, you need to isolate it because you really don't want infection spreading into the rest of your herd. Or you could just get rid of it straight away and kind of cut your losses. But I think this is hopefully where we're going to see a bit of pressure on English farmers and English farmers a bit more engaged in terms of tagging and testing their animals before they come across the border. Because if that animal arrives at the market with a negative test already, as a Welsh buyer, you can have confidence that animal's safe to come on to your farm. So yeah, post-movement testing it really is the kind of last resort. We'd much rather animals were tested before they moved, but we can't force English farmers to do that as Welsh Government, sadly.
Can I, and you know me well enough in the steering group, I like to ask a couple of off-the-cuff questions, Richard. What would be the situation, say now, you mentioned the farmer would do what you mentioned just now. What would happen if the farmer decides, I'm going to cut my loss? Once the result has come back, I'm going to sell this one straight away, I'm going to get rid of it immediately. So in effect, the cattle that is on his holding now, there is no risk. Can the vet change that status then, or is he bound to keep on testing for pre-movement testing?
The vet can change that status, but the vet has got to be happy that there is no BVD on the farm. So it's a conversation between the farmer and the vet to try and work out, is there a risk that BVD has been spreading on the farm since the animal came in or not? But yeah, there is a pathway for that status to be changed, but it's speak to your vet to make that decision.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else want to? Phil?
Isolation of animals coming in onto the farm benefits the rest of the stock on that farm, but also benefits the animals you're buying in, because there may be other diseases on the farm that your animals aren't used to. So if you get sort of them exposed gently to whatever is happening on your farm, then that is beneficial for the incoming stock and the stock you already have. But if it is coming in with something new, then you limit the spread, then you really want to keep those animals well away from pregnant cows. They're the ones you really want to be sort of safe within the structure you have.
Brilliant, Phil, thank you very much. Now, I'm on the last question now you'll be happy to hear. And this one, each one of you will have a chance. I would like each one of you to have a go at this one, because I think it is important for us as a steering group to know which direction we want the scheme to go. And then the question is now, obviously, we need a roadmap for the scheme to go into in the future. How would you like this roadmap, or how would it look like, or what would be, which way do you think the roadmap should take us? Anyone?
Yeah, really, really important that we try to protect the clean farms. They've done a great job to be clean, and we want life to be as easy as possible for them to be rewarded for that achievement. And likewise, if there's a farmer that's got BVD and not tried or trying to get rid of it, inevitably the eyes will go more and more in that direction to try to stop them, infecting the clean farms. We're trying to protect our, this is like a football match. We're going to protect our 2-0 lead, and we really, really don't want to lose a goal. So that's the sort of direction of travel is what we'll be doing. Lots of tools in the box that we're aware of from other countries to apply, but we're all very, very conscious that it's a pain and gain balance that we're balancing here. The quicker we get rid of BVD, the more pain we have to carry, and some of that is unfair and unbearable. So we're just trying to make gain with an acceptable level of pain and just monitor progress so that we can then be happy with the balance that we're trying to achieve.
Anybody else?
I think from the government perspective, I echo what John said, but we in particular are really keen on making sure that the legislation evolves so that it works for farmers and keepers, and it makes it easier for people to get their negative status, as I said earlier. So we will see the legislation changing over the next year or so. Obviously, timeframes that can't be concrete on at the moment. And when that legislation does change and evolve, then we'll do our best to communicate that in advance and make sure people are clear around what is expected of them and what they can do to really support BVD eradication. As John said, I think most of the people we've been talking to about BVD this week are asking how they can work with us, how they can do the right thing, which is really good to hear. But yeah, if there are people who maybe don't want to come on that journey and at some point are going to hold Wales back, I think that's when we're also going to have to start looking further down the line at how enforcement actions are taken. But right now we're in the early stages and we're looking quite good.
Katie, have you, from an auctioneer's point of view, have you an idea or requests of how the scheme should evolve, taking into the auctioneer's point of view?
I think obviously, sort of as I touched on earlier, trade not being affected is sort of the key point for us as auctioneers and for the farm businesses that we support. So again, as I touched on earlier, getting that message across the border, and especially, like you say, those border counties having being able to recognise the tag and testing that they do, encourage those farmers, and if they can be recognised for what they do and rewarded by that being, almost part of the Welsh scheme, then that would be a big win, I think. Extending Wales's borders as such.
Anybody else like to add to that, or I'll draw it to a close?
I think this is a very good news story. It's been a tough journey up to now, but the system as it is working, and it's getting that positive message out to say that if you're buying an animal, then you're much more likely to be buying a healthy animal than you were before. So I've had people say, well, why should I bear the brunt of buying a PI animal? How can a seller sell such an animal? And that's what it's there to stop. It's a shame that is what we have to have, but that's human nature, isn't it? And as soon as we keep Gwion busy by filling his database with negative status animals and negative status herds, then that's how we get there, and it'll push our neighbours to do something similar.
And information is key here, isn't it? And the database, it's making sure that information is available and is being used, by the keepers, by the vets, by the livestock auctioneers, so we know what we're buying and selling, So that's our role, is just support the industry to eradicate this disease from Wales.
Could I just add, because we've said about how important the conversations between the vets and the farmers is, which absolutely 100%, but equally talk to your auctioneer, you know, from the health management of your herd, you've got your vet to talk to, from the trade-in and selling status, talk to your auctioneer, because we will help you as well in what your options are for your different statuses of herds and where you are within your BVD journey.
Brilliant, Katie, thank you. Thank you. I think that we have covered everything that we have thought about covering, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Elaine Jenkins personally for arranging this get-together today and bringing this panel of experts together, and thank Elaine throughout the year for the work that she's done. And also, it gives me great pleasure to thank the panel for the participating and sharing their experience, their expertise today, and thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.